Today with Victoria Fenton, we're going to be discussing food, coronavirus. Can you build up your immunity? Is it really possible to think that by eating the right type of food while we're in lockdown, that should COVID come knocking on the door at home, that our immunity is stronger? I think for many people the answer to that is obviously yes, it is. But what happens if you've already got diabetes or high blood pressure, or you've got a lot of excess body weight? Could you day by day start to move to a better metabolic state with the food choices that you're making, and therefore make yourself stronger to not so much fend off, but to battle against the virus should you get it? That's going to be the subject of today. Great to see you. My name's Steve Bennett. I'm your host, and we've got many things to be discussing today. What I've been noticing in the last few days of the show, lots more interaction from you at home, loads more questions coming in. So please carry on with that today, because we would love to hear from you. Also, later today, on my Fat and Furious podcast series, we're launching the new episode with Dr. Jason Fung. Now, Dr. Jason Fung is a brilliant author, and his area of real expertise, I mean, he's brilliant in all areas, but his real sort of stardom bit is around intermittent fasting. So if you want to learn anything at all about intermittent fasting, go down the whatever you call that, the bits down below on YouTube, and find the Fat and Furious You can see I'm really technical. You can find the Fat and Furious podcast series with Dr. Jason Fung. A massive thank you to everybody that's making the donations to Just Giving. It's been really greatly appreciated, and also so many of you now making a real effort to go and put food into the food banks and the collection points in the supermarket. I was in a supermarket yesterday, and for the first time since lockdown, I noticed the food boxes were jam full with donations. So it looks like the message is getting out there. So a massive thank you to everybody that's dropping off food in the food banks. And then if you could donate, whether it be £5, £10 to Just Giving, or the text number, it'd be massively appreciated, because right now the operating costs of the food banks have gone sky high as they've had to change the way they get food to people during lockdown. And more than ever, we need your support, because more than ever, with the financial crisis that's hitting and people sadly losing their jobs and things like that, more people than ever need our help to put food on their table for themselves and, more importantly, their children. So thank you for everyone so far donated and dropped off food. But the more we can do, the better. That would be really helpful. Now, every day we ask you, what did you cook for the first time yesterday? We've got a little bit of a competition going on where we ask you to show us what you maybe have cooked, really nutritionally dense foods for the first time ever. We're asking you to put your cooking tips, photographs, suggestions, what you did onto Facebook over at Primal Living, and we've had some really good ones come through. Here looks like really naughty chocolate biscuits, but they're not. They're super healthy ones made out of cocoa powder and other primal ingredients. So well done for the suggestion there. We had so many coming in, and it's in fact, Jack, I can't hear you. Jack, shout at me.
Right, hi.
Jack's going to take over. Get yourself on screen, Jack.
This is Asian style pork.
We can't see you, Jack.
Yeah, I can see me.
No, we want to see you. There you are.
Yeah,
right.
you can. This is Asian style pork. Normally served with lettuce. I do it a lot at uni. It's not mine, but massive fan favourite of that. Then we've also got a healthy red Thai curry with cognac noodles, which you discussed a few days ago. Very healthy. And then also we've got from Lawn and Leon's the perfect start to the day, superfood primal pancakes with yogurt and fresh berries. Does sound like something Jess would absolutely adore. And then finally, from Sally Taylor, she says that she's just discovered the wildflower in her garden is edible.
Wow.
3-cornered leeks, every pie is edible, and the flowers are fab in a salad for a garlicky, oniony kick. Here with tomatoes, alfalfa sprouts, and balsamic vinegar. Ooh.
Sounds good, eh?
Fantastic.
Let's go and see what we can find edible in our garden, Jack. Be careful if you do that at home for the first time. Some things are not good for us. But well done. Keep those suggestions coming in. It is a competition. We will, at the end of lockdown, pick our winner, and we will be providing prizes. Right, let's get straight on to today's show. Food versus Corona. Now, we've got to say a massive thank you to Victoria Fenton joining us because she's joining us all the way from South Africa. Good morning, Victoria. How are you?
Morning. I'm good, thank you. Yes, very well.
So for those that don't know, you're from the UK, as we can probably guess from your accent, and no surprises there. But you arrived in South Africa just before lockdown. Just tell us that little bit of the story, because it's fascinating.
Yeah, so I run a virtual business anyway, so my kind of company is global, and I've always consulted virtually, so I do feel a little bit cheated by everybody now doing virtual stuff, but that's kind of how my world has been. And I landed in South Africa, I don't know, it was about a month before this started to really kick off and be serious, and then we got locked down and we are housebound essentially. So I've been sort of swapping between Airbnbs where I could stay. I didn't get anything set up properly, didn't get a house properly. So it's all been a bit just making do with what I've got, but it's been interesting.
And lockdown's a lot stricter out there. You're not even allowed to go outside and exercise, are you, in South Africa?
No, not yet. And I feel very sorry for the dogs, actually, because they haven't been walked in about a month now.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, there's going to be so many different things. For years we're going to be measuring, I think, post-lockdown of, obviously there's the tragedy of the deaths and things like that, but all the knock-on effects of people not, different countries where they have been able to exercise and not exercise. Somebody said to me the other day, even the Olympics won't be fair anymore. I said, what do you mean by that? They said, because for a sports person in a 4-year period, in some countries, not to be able to go outdoors, it ruins them, but there you go. So tell everybody about yourself, and then let's then jump straight into food.
So I'm a functional medicine consultant and nutritionist, naturopath. I have been I've run my own business doing that for over 7 years now, something like that. So yes, I work with people on a whole spectrum of issues, from complex chronic illness all the way through to health optimization and getting the best out of your biochemistry and body and mindset. I do a lot of the spread of physiology all the way through to mindset, spirituality, purpose stuff, because it all matters for health. So it's a broad job, and I get to help a lot of people, and I feel very lucky to do what I do.
That's brilliant. Thanks for the introduction there. So let's start off. I'm 54. The year I was born, the average Brit weighed 2.5 stone less than the average Brit does today. That's about a 16 kg shift in body weight. And we're getting newspaper headlines now saying that other than the old, the next most vulnerable group is the overweight. Where have we gone so wrong with our food in the last 50 years?
Oh, so I think the whole food environment has shifted in that time, essentially. We've moved from very simple eating, very basic food that you could cook, and a lot of home-cooked foods, to pre-prepared foods, to packaged foods, to things that you can buy for convenience to speed up time, etc. But when you buy for convenience, you sacrifice quality and density a lot of the time. And the other thing that's also changed within the food environment is the proliferation of what we call highly palatable foods. So effectively, it's foods which are high in fat and sugar simultaneously often, that are very difficult to stop eating, and suddenly you're eating lots and lots of calories, and the weight balance of the population can shift. And we see this when we look at populations where these kinds of foods are brought in. It changes populations. People start to carry more adiposity, which is just a fancy word for weight.
Yeah, it literally, you do, don't you? I've seen so many cases of it, from small little islands to huge places like India and China, that all of a sudden, when they start to accept the food that we've been in the modern world, supposedly modern world, been consuming for the last 50 years, they've as soon as they become commercialized and things start coming in packages with advertising campaigns, they face exactly the same problems as we have.
Yeah, and especially liquid calories as well. So I think the one thing that sort of you can chart is when Coca-Cola gets introduced to the population, you start drinking calories, and of course there's no nutrients in fizzy sugary drinks, so you're getting a lot of calories, but you're not nourishing your body in any way by doing that, and therefore you create this strange difference within biochemistry. Actually, you alter the way the body works, processes sugar, processes insulin, and all of that can be very weight gain and fat gain promoting.
Yeah, that's so. Well, I was going to say fascinating, but that's the wrong word. It's so upsetting, really, because if we could just get back to real food, then a lot of this wouldn't be happening. I was trying to explain to somebody the other day that, and I think I can never remember where I steal all these phrases from, but I think I stole this one from Zoe Harkham, who's a brilliant author in the UK. And Zoe said that if something once had a face on it, let's say cattle or fish, it's predominantly protein and fat. If something didn't have a face on it, plant-based, it's predominantly protein and carbohydrates. But the two things that never are found together in nature, with a couple of exceptions, are fat and carbohydrates. And when you put the two together, that's when everything starts to go wrong. And sadly, in packaged foods, that's what most packaged foods are. They're high in carbohydrates, high in fat. And they've done loads of experiments on rats and mice, and when they feed them a diet like that, they just do get bigger and bigger and bigger. Is that oversimplifying the problem, or is that a good place to start?
It's a very good place to start. I mean, the problem within nutrition is that whenever you start to make statements, you're always oversimplifying the problem. Like it's a huge world, nutrition, and everything plays a role. But you have to start somewhere. You have to make some statements about what affects health, what influences weight. And yes, it's a great place to start to think about where things are found in nature. And it isn't to say that fat and sugar, fat and carbs don't exist together in nature. It doesn't mean you can't eat them together. I think people get strangely weird about vegetable carbohydrates. But what we're saying is highly palatable things that are just refined sugars, and the things that basically take your body on a roller coaster of highs of sugar and adrenaline and all the things that get released when you do that, and then crash you down into feeling like you're hungry again. They're going to change your biochemistry significantly, so you'll need more food at that point. So it's not just you're eating more calories, you are changing appetite regulation quite significantly when you dominate your diet using fake foods.
Yeah,
foods.
no, you're absolutely right. I'm just going back to my very first health book I wrote, because I don't know if you've ever seen it, but I called it the Carbo Coaster. And the Carbo Coaster, because you eat something full of sugar, you get that big rush of energy. You don't use it all, so insulin comes along, grabs it, buries it in your fat stores, and then you're hungry all over again. And that's why, when I used to feed my kids and myself cereals in the morning, by 11 o'clock you were starving. So you'd have a quick sandwich or something at school, or even worse, a donut, and then that would make you go, oh, and then very quickly crash again. And the whole day at school, sadly for my kids, it was like carbs, crash, carbs, crash, carbs, crash. Whereas if you can start off with something that isn't carbohydrates, like some good yogurts or some good fruit, certainly the berries, then you just don't get on that carbo coaster.
Yeah, and everything I do in healthcare generally, I'm always approaching things from a nervous system perspective, because it's kind of the master control regulator of everything. So even though we're talking about digestive systems or hormone systems, etc., I'm always focusing on the nervous system. And that means that when I'm thinking about nutrition, I don't recommend things that I know send people on those kind of roller coasters, because your nervous system is always trying to pull you back from peaks and troughs. And it becomes this kind of, I call them kryptonite foods as well, because you can't stop eating them, because you need more of the thing that you're trying to eat, because actually it's not nourishing you. And your body's got this, I'm getting calories, but no nutrients. What? I need more, clearly. And you just keep eating. And that turns into habit. And then those foods are very difficult to get off, actually, because they're highly palatable, which means really tasty. They hit everything in our taste buds, and also our nervous systems go a bit, oh my God, this is amazing. So we just think we need and can have more of them.
No, that's great advice. Go back one step though. Explain what you mean by the nervous system.
So the nervous system effectively is the way the brain communicates with the body, but it does that through interpreting all the signals from nerves, literally nerves, which convey messages from all of the places within your body, all the way back up to the brain. But also your eyes will interpret the outside world, and all of your senses interpret the outside world. And so the combination of interpretation of the outside world plus interpretation of your inner world gets kind of mashed together in your brain. And it's how your brain creates a response to the external environment. So your nervous system will then send hormones, neurotransmitters to places within your body, organs, systems, to match your body to what's happening within the outside world. Which is why when we talk about food environment, it can be quite lethal to be in this environment where there's just this presence of constant stimulation, whether that's noise and light and social media, plus all these foods which are just keeping us on a roller coaster. It keeps our nervous system very much in a stressed state. And very loosely speaking, you can think of the autonomic nervous system, which regulates everything about being human, in two branches. So we've got the parasympathetic, which is rest and digest and recover and restore. And you've got sympathetic, which is kind of stress. It's fight or flight. It's very agitated. And the problem with staying in either one of these for too long is that this should exist on a seesaw. It should be that you can flick between both. You have the moments of stress and then you have the moments of rest and relaxation. We tend to, in modern environments, get stuck in sympathetic modes. We get stuck in this kind of fight-flight mode. And of course, from that position, we make decisions differently, we behave differently. We also then don't need to be stimulated by foods or anything really that further promotes this kind of stress dynamic within our system.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting, because I've certainly found in lockdown, and don't get me wrong, we've got it so much easier than you've got it, and there are some very positives for my family because we're spending more time together, but it is so different to my normal day. Yeah. That I'm finding that I've been approaching food a little bit wrong, and and I should know what I'm doing because I've been talking about it for 5 years. But I've definitely put on a bit of weight in the last couple of weeks because I haven't been as rigid as I would normally be. In fact, tomorrow I'm going to start a 5-day fast because I've just got so angry at myself the last couple of days. But that's what happens, isn't it? Once you get into that different zone, it's like a treadmill. It's so difficult to get off.
There's a couple of things there. Most definitely, there is this kind of, when there is more stress around, we make decisions interpreting that external stress and trying to rationalize it physically, physiologically, often not mentally, but our body tries to resonate with that and find a different coping strategy. So often within human beings, that is substances, because they change our state. And we want them to do that. That's what we eat for. It's why, alcohol and drugs can be quite compelling, because we want to change our state, but food's just chemicals. And I think we forget sometimes that people campaign for food not to be an emotional thing. It is, it really is. We eat emotionally, we eat to change states. And a lot of people in professional industry like mine try to get people away from that. And I'm very not that practitioner. I very much work within, okay, so we can use our food to show us how we're feeling, because often we don't know. And often we don't fully realize how stressed we are, but we can witness it in the way we're behaving around nutrition and the way we're eating more sugar or the way we're falling off our wagon that we've created. And yes, we can get annoyed with ourselves and go, I'm doing a 5-day fast and all that kind of stuff. And that's fine if that's where you need to be. But I also do need to make sure that we're very clear that if you have fallen off a wagon during lockdown, it's totally fine. This too will pass. It's okay. Because it's difficult, particularly as we're back in environments again. So you're around a fridge all the time. You can walk into your kitchen and get anything at any point because you're at home. And that's very uncommon. Yeah. So it means that you tend to snack more. You tend to reach for even if it's healthy stuff, like I've eaten so many dates in the last 4 weeks because they're just there. And I'm like, oh, and they're really sweet and they're healthy, but they're not they are sugar. So
yeah, nuts have been my problem. I mean, they've got so many goodness in them. Mm-hmm. But you have to remember, in terms of energy, one peanut has the same energy as one Tic Tac. Now, I never eat Tic Tacs, but it's still that same amount of energy. And I'm finding, because they're there, and I've got 5 children at home, and the snacks are all there, that I know I should be restricting to just a little handful of nuts or whatever. And yeah, it's very difficult. Very, very difficult. Let's change tack a little bit. I heard you speak recently about genetics, epigenetics, and I hope I've written this down right, nutrigenomics. What do all these mean?
Did I? No, I talk about a lot. No, I did. So genetics is your genome. It's what your blueprint that you're built with. And that is kind of, we think about it as the way you're designed to be to a degree. Epigenetics is everything on top of that. So it's become two different things, actually. The word is used differently by different populations, and people get very annoyed about language in this industry, so I have to be careful. But epigenetics is essentially all of the life factors that happen on top of your genetic blueprint. So that is everything, literally everything, from the day you're born, the food you eat, the environments you live in, the parenting you've had, the toxins you've been exposed to, the trauma you've been exposed to. It all melts into your phenotype, how your body is, on top of genetics. So it's useful to know both. Epigenetics can also be used to discuss about epigenetic age, which is where it comes slightly differently, because epigenetic age is all to do with how old do your genes look, does your DNA look, given all of those epigenetic factors that you've been through, versus what's your biological age, sort of your age on your birth certificate. And that can be very interesting to look at, because you can then, through assessing epigenetic age, assess how much impact, negative impact, on your genes has all the epigenetic influences that you've been through had.
Right.
And nutrigenomics, sorry, third one, nutrigenomics is the nutrition that your genetics is suited to eating effectively. And we know a lot, we don't know everything, but we do know quite a lot about it's not whether you can tolerate broccoli. That's not, you can't get that level of detail from genes. But it's very much about macronutrient composition of the diet and how that's best suited to your genetics. Mostly actually the studies at the moment are to do with weight gain, and they're to do with diabetes risk and cholesterol and heart disease risk, rather than anything health promoting. And again, that has to be interpreted on top of what are you doing in your life? So are you trying to be an athlete? Are you trying to get pregnant? All of these external life factors change the way you need to nourish your body.
That's really, really interesting. With a few exceptions, and there are a few exceptions, I wrote in my book that, genetics, probably sometimes people worry. I've got a cousin totally worried about her genetic makeup because sadly a mother died at a young age. But I said, you have to look at it another way. Genetics, it's almost like, yes, your gun might be slightly loaded, but it's the way you live your lifestyle that will either pull the trigger or not pull the trigger. So I guess that's the genetics and the epigenetics, isn't it? Yes, you might be slightly more predisposed to something. There's a slightly more chance. My mum's got Alzheimer's. Maybe I'm at a slightly higher risk. My dad's diabetic type 2, injects himself. Maybe I'm at a slightly higher risk, but I can do something and mitigate those risks a bit, because maybe my gun is loaded for both of those, but the way I live my lifestyle will decide whether I pull the trigger or not. And I know there's a few exceptions, but is that the difference really between genetics and epigenetics?
100%, yeah, absolutely. And the reality is that, I've got a genetic connective tissue disorder. It is likely to be something that if I have children, I will pass on to them. But everything about this condition that I have is effectively management strategies. It's kind of how I got into doing what I do, because there's never a cure for that. There's never suddenly my connective tissue is going to be different tomorrow, but there is management strategies. There's how do I nourish myself so my gut is healthy, my microbiome is healthy, my inflammation levels are low, my immune system is supported, and my nervous system is calm. And how do I behave? Do I choose to not go skiing? Yes, I choose to not go skiing because I will break something, I will hurt myself. It's just management strategies, and that's your epigenetics. And it is so much of the risk factors for developing most conditions, particularly older age conditions such as Alzheimer's, Parkinson's.
So food has a huge part to play, doesn't it, in many of those diseases. A lot of people, certainly in Europe, talking about Alzheimer's now as diabetes type 3. What's your feeling on that?
I think it's a little bit oversimplistic and a little bit reductionist, but the essence is there. We know a lot about, so the whole theories of Alzheimer's are the creation of beta amyloid within the brain and it creating impacts. But we know that beta amyloid is actually a defense mechanism that's created when there's inflammatory states. And I think we know that eating lots of refined sugar, all of the behaviors that would lead to diabetes type 2, not type 1, it's very clear that type 1 is an autoimmune condition, but diabetes type 2, which is just over consuming refined foods, not really moving very much, not having those kind of healthy behaviors, they are very inflammatory. So it is very possible that they are contributing to the inflammation and therefore the creation of beta amyloid and therefore Alzheimer's potentially. But there's other factors too. So sleep's a huge one for Alzheimer's. Getting the right level of sleep is huge for your brain to detoxify and to let go of all of the beta amyloid that is created. So yes, I think there's an argument for inflammation generally being part of Alzheimer's. Definitely.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because obviously my mum and dad, they're 6 days apart in age, and it's very romantic. They've been together since they were 14 years old. They both turn 80 next week. And so basically what I'm saying is they've lived together they've been married for 60 years. Again, their anniversary in June. So 60 years together, eating the same diet. This is what I find really interesting. So they would go swimming together occasionally, but they're not much more exercise other than that. But they've always eaten together. They've probably eaten together for their entire adult life, probably 99% of the time. So eating the same thing. They live together, cook together, eat together. And we look at metabolic syndrome, and what we see is that it's almost the same thing that's manifested in slightly different ways. So with Dad, he's got diabetic, and we look at the only difference, he eats way more than Mom, but he gets a good night's sleep. And we'll go out in the sunshine, whereas my mum at a very early age was told by a doctor you shouldn't go out in the sunshine. So she's avoided the sun, doesn't sleep very well. Dad never gets stressed, Mum's always stressed, probably because probably for those very reasons. But the core thing is the same diet, and that's why I think it's really interesting that so many doctors are now saying that we have to understand that metabolic syndrome, the linking of too much insulin and too much carbs, it could have effects on blood pressure, cancer, diabetes, Alzheimer's, stroke, and so many different things. And what does that all come back to? It comes back to food choices. And a lot more things like exercise and sun and sleep and all those sorts of things. Right, we've got so many questions coming in for you. Jack, while I scroll through and pick some great questions, have we got the little sugar advert? 'Cause I don't know if Victoria's seen that.
Oh, no.
Okay, so we I don't know if you know, in the UK, there's Jen and David Unwin, Dr. David Unwin.
Yeah.
Brilliant guy. He's been working with his team looking at when you eat certain food types, what does that break down into sugar in the blood glucose level. We've got a great chart that he's got from cornflakes to sandwiches to all sorts. So but the message wasn't it was getting across to some families, but some still weren't getting it. So I put a bit of cash in, and we came up with a little 1 minute little clip to explain to people where sugar's hiding. If we have a little look at this, then we'll go to take questions. So that was our way of trying to explain where all sugar was hidden. And when you see like the orange juice turn into sugar cubes, that is the amount of sugar effect on the blood glucose level. And
Absolutely. That's
yeah.
really good, that. Yeah, very good. I love as well that baguettes turn to sugar and all of those things, because people don't think like that. They don't realize that even the pasta bowl turns to sugar.
We took a Subway's, I don't know what it's like in South Africa, but as you know, in the UK, it's everywhere at the moment. And we took a Subway, just the bread, and weighed it. We actually went round, very naughty of me, went round to the local Subway next door to our TV studios. And I said, I've got my own cheese and my own butter, but can I just have a roll? They went, just the roll. And they went, and I feel even worse because they gave it me for free. And little did they know I was going to use it against them, and I gave it me for free, which I feel terrible about. Really, I'm going to get a hell, not heaven. But we weighed the bread, and the bread was the equivalent of 15 sugar cubes on the bloodstream.
Oh my goodness.
So we all think so much about, what filling do we have in the inside of the Subway to make sure it's a healthy filling. Don't worry too much about the filling. Just get rid of the bread. Just ditch the bread. Oh God, I've poisoned my kids so much for so many years. Right, Samuel says, are those with a high sugar diet considered in the high risk category for corona? Great question.
Yeah, we have to be very careful because the risk categories we actually don't fully know yet. We know a little bit, but not masses, and it seems to be changing in different countries' populations. But ultimately, high sugar diets create a residual inflammatory status within the body, but also within that quite a stressed state, and that's high in cortisol, and that will automatically lower immunity, is the way to think about it. So effectively, if your diet is mainly sugary foods, you are putting your entire body in a state of vulnerability, in which if you are exposed to coronavirus, you are likely to get it. Whether that means you get really terrible symptoms is probably mixed in with other factors. But it's definitely not something I would be advising ever, but certainly at this time when we're facing lots more stress than normal and a global pandemic, it's probably not the healthiest diet to be thinking of staying on.
That's really good advice. In fact, I just saw WHO have come out and said consuming alcohol in this period is going to weaken your defences. Is that for the same reason, in the fact that maybe alcohol turns into sugar, or is that different reasons?
So alcohol must be processed by the body first. If you're eating anything, the alcohol has to be, and drinking at the same time, your liver has to metabolize the alcohol first because it's a toxin. Ultimately, the alcohol creates additional stress for the human body. So effectively, that's probably the mechanism they're talking about. If your body's dealing with other stress, then maybe that's another risk factor. I think in South Africa, we're banned from purchasing alcohol. But I was trying for a long time to work out whether that was a mechanism of illness, but actually it's much more to do with overloading the hospitals with people who've got alcohol-related accidents, illness, all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's definitely inflammatory, which is a shame. Which is a shame.
The other thing that really, really interesting, and again, I've got to thank Zoe Harkin for this one because I didn't realise this, and it was after I'd written already 2 or 3 books. I do like the occasional, okay, that's a lie, more than often a nice glass of red wine. But so there's a hormone, isn't there, called glucagon, that when you've got no sugar in your bloodstream and it needs energy, glucagon goes to your fat stores and turns it back into energy. And I always wondered why, when I'd had a couple of glasses, I would then start to be naughty with food. And I thought, well, it's just because you've had a few glasses of wine, you become weak-willed. But it's more than that. It's just, maybe it is a bit of weak-willed then as well. But also, because then you're blocking glucagon from going and get energy from your fat stores, you then almost have to eat. That's why we go and have a kebab after a night out, because we've had a few too many drinks, and now we've got really low sugar in the bloodstream because the glucagon that would normally be going and turning my body fat, my already paid forward store of food, back into energy, doesn't work so well. So I remember glucagon before I had my 3rd glass of wine now, and normally it stops me, but there we go. Not always. Wish it did. Right. The Marvelous says, yes, the moment I see the picture of bread, beautiful presented, my mouth starts to water, and I feel like a magnet to eat bread. Think of Steve Bennett and no bread and manage to stop. Oh, thank you, Marvellous. I don't know whether that's a good thing to see a picture of me and then want to stop. In fact, what you should do, Marvellous, if you got, I've just dropped the book. If you are going to think of me and stop, use the image of me pre-going Primal. Go and stick to that. That should frighten everybody off bread. That's it. Yeah, Hovis can put whatever they want on the side of their lovely loaves, but you go and stick that on your fridge and you're sure to stop eating bread for sure. Sean says, I have recently tried to change my relationship with food and these videos are really helping. Oh, that's great. And then she goes on to say, my preferred breakfast is poached or scrambled eggs and smoked salmon. That's very healthy. But I don't want to be having the same thing every day. Are Weetabix and coconut milk a good alternative for me? Well, coconut milk certainly Primal. Let's see what Victoria's got to say about Weetabix, because well, yeah, you're supposed to have 3 a day if you want to be strong.
Yeah, no, Weetabix is not a good replacement for eggs and salmon, unfortunately. Weetabix is refined carbs and sugar. You know, if you really want something wheaty like that, possibly shredded wheat, but you're still just having wheat in a bowl. Eggs are miraculous foods. You can do everything with eggs. You can do scrambled, poached, you can create omelets, you can create, what I really love is frittatas. So you create like a frittata, do it the night before. You can have those cold. It can be snacks, it can be breakfast, it can be anything. And then muffins, you can make egg muffins with no flour. It's just like an egg muffin.
That's our favourite. Because we've all got those 12 little egg cup trays at home, haven't we? Because we've stopped baking cakes now, haven't we? We've all stopped baking cakes. Yes, we have. But we've all still got that little 12 tray. And do you do the same then? Do you put a little bit of butter in so it doesn't stick? You put the butter around like you would with the cake. And then what we do the night before, we fry up. What do we do, Jack? Normally mushrooms.
Bacon.
Mushrooms.
Bacon salad.
Say again, mate?
Bacon or salmon.
Yeah, bacon or salmon.
Yeah.
We put a bit of green in. We normally put a bit of, what do we put in normally?
Spring onions every now and then, if we've had feeling fat.
Sometimes onions, mushrooms. Although we have to be careful of the mushrooms because not all the kids like mushrooms. So half the tray's got mushrooms in, half hasn't got mushrooms in. And then you pour the egg in till it's flat. Just do the same, yeah? So you pour your beaten egg in till it's flat, put it in the oven, and they rise just like cakes would. And they're gorgeous. Yep. And then we're naughty. Well, not naughty because it's kind of well, it's primal but not keto. We take it out just before they're ready. We sprinkle some cheese on, put it back in. The cheese, oh, mwah! There's loads of ways to cook eggs.
Yeah, definitely.
But again, isn't it? That's the problem with marketing, because you know we used to have 2 Weetabix, but the advert was, you know, you've got to be strong to have 3. So you'd be, I've got to force another one down. I've got to put more sugar inside my body. Oh, we've all been misled for so long. Marvelous
it's
says,
like ready breath as well, when they're like talking about being warm from the inside out for your tiny children, and it's like it's just carbs in a bowl.
Yeah. Oh, dear me. Marketing. Isn't it true, really, if you think about it? It's not just packaged foods. I bet health changed massively on the invention of marketing. Because prior to marketing, you would have eaten what felt healthy for you. You'd have eaten stuff that just yourself and your own brain was going, that's good for me. That feels good. I feel energetic. I don't feel lethargic after I've had that. And then marketing comes along and starts to brainwash us that try this, try that.
And also microwaves. It's the 3 things. It's the marketing, convenience food, and microwaves. Because if you've got a microwave, you can make anything really quickly. So, but those foods need to be differently flavored. So if you think about the way ready meals are made, they're made with using more salt, more sugar, more fat, because the way you cook them is so rapid cook. If you just had it would taste bland if it didn't add these other things. So yeah, marketing, evolutions in tech, plus, you know, sugar.
Try and find another M. We should have 3 M's. We all know about the 6 P's. Microwave, marketing, and madness. There we go. Right. Sean says, Marla says, it is emotional after my lessons, especially after a hard one. I must eat something, even that I am not hungry, like chocolates, biscuits. So recently I've moved to walnuts. It's emotional after my lessons. So I'm not sure what lessons Marvelous is having, but
music ones, looking at them.
Music, because of course it's Marvelous music. So she's probably having music lessons, but then feels like she must eat something even though she's not hungry. I mean, that is the state of modern living, isn't it? People are eating, and I was there, that's why I was obese for 25 years. You'd eat when you wasn't hungry. I mean, that's just not the way we designed, is it?
No, I mean, there's a couple of things there. No, I mean, we tend to just mindlessly eat all the time. The one thing I would say about if it is music lessons you're doing, you might not feel hungry, but actually they're very draining. I'm a musician, so I know how exhausted you are after playing something. So particularly if I'm playing my flute, I mean, it's a whole physiological thing. Or singing, it's draining. I might not be hungry. So, going to the chocolate, the biscuits is probably a little bit of a habit. Walnut sounds like a great thing to do. If you can eat a few, if you're eating half a pack of walnuts, probably not. But definitely to restore the healthy fats, because when you're learning something, you are triggering all the synapses of your brain. Your brain's basically a blob of fat, and you need to have lots of this kind of fat and nutrients to enable you to fire all these synapses and learn and adapt, definitely.
So I didn't know you were a musician. Right, next time you're on, we want you playing your flute as a little, we need to do, you've got to, not only have you got to come up with the 3 M's, you've now got to do the jingle with your flute.
Happily for me, my flute's in the UK, so that's not happening.
Oh, fantastic. Where are we? Would gin, in fact, no, I've missed a few. So many questions coming in for you. I tend to get a lot of colds, only minor ones, says Sean. Does this mean I have a weak immune system? Are there foods I can eat to improve this? Sean gets a lot of colds. Interesting one here, because my wife gets lots of colds. What's your view on that?
It can indicate immune vulnerabilities. Effectively, you're not fighting off things that you've been exposed to. So we have to bear in mind, in the context of global viruses, we're exposed to viruses and colds and stuff all the time. And our bodies just naturally fight them. But if we're getting them more frequently, it tends to suggest that there's something not quite right within our physiology that's allowing our immune system to be vulnerable. So the answer to, is there one food? Probably not. Is there a nutritional style? Yeah, definitely. A primal whole foods diet will help you be more resilient. There are other things though. So if you mentioned earlier about being outside in sunlight, vitamin D is fundamental for the immune system, and it's really common within the UK to be vitamin D deficient because there's no sun. I mean, that's harsh, but there's less sun than there should be. And it's very important to get your levels checked, and your GP should do that, and then supplement if you're not okay with that, and that will support your immune system. Or just supplement anyway. I mean, 1,000 IUs of vitamin D taken is something that's pretty standard during winter for the UK. And the other things you can think of are, particularly if this is a woman, we need to think about iron levels, because iron is very important for maintaining immune health, etc. And that's more of an issue with women because of menstruation. So we need to make sure that our iron levels are okay and stored iron levels are good. And B vitamins are often really lacking. And that again comes to nutrition. So you can only get certain B vitamins from red meat or meat in general. So a lot of vegans, vegetarians, people who are plant-based tend to miss those nutrients and a lot of amino acids, and that will create underlying weaknesses within immune systems.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. In fact, somebody had a go at me the other day for having a go at vegans. I said, I never have a go at vegans, because I said people need to realise it's not about vegans against carnivores. It's really about real food against fake food, because you can have real vegetarian foods and you can have fake vegetarian foods. You can have real meats, and you can kind of have fake meats these days that are so highly processed, and cattle, especially in America, you're just not eating the right food. So the battle really is, we're all on the same side. We've all just got to start eating real foods. And again, one of my companies is a vitamin and minerals company, and realistically, if somebody ate a total primal balanced diet in terms of the right vegetables and the right meat and the right fish, I probably would never sell a supplement again. But certainly it's vegans and vegetarians that keeps my supplement company going, because certain things like B12, you just can't get enough of it without meat.
Yeah, and it's so important. I have nothing against vegans and vegetarians, because a lot of them are doing it for ethical reasons, which I respect totally. I do have a problem with the argument that when people say it's healthier, because it's just not, it's a logical fallacy. It's not, neither is healthier. It's about, is your diet constructed well enough to give you all of the amino acids, vitamins and minerals that you need? It's much harder on a vegetarian diet, Still very possible though. So it's just about how your diet's constructed. And again, we're back at real foods, whole foods, prepared properly. And that's the key to vegetarianism. You know, if you're having your grains and things, soak and sprout them.
Thank you. Thank you. Take vitamin C every day. That's a fact, says Tracy. Yep, I agree. Poppy says, how likely is a child to get diabetes if both parents have type 2? What can they do to reduce their chances? Could stress as well as food have an effect?
So the type 2 diabetes isn't passed on genetically, but we've already mentioned about the vital importance of environment that you're raised in. So if your parents have type 2 diabetes, the likelihood is that their nutritional environment and their habits and behaviors haven't been great, and they are likely to be passed down to the children. So that's kind of that reality. It's perfectly possible for changes to be made, but the same changes that would suit the parents, as in reducing the refined carbohydrates, focusing more on proteins and fats, all of that kind of stuff, that will support the child. Can stress play a role? Absolutely. Stress is what we're talking about all the time when we're talking about health. So when we're talking about inflammatory foods or sugary foods, we're talking about the stress they place on the physical body. That's the metabolic impact, and that's the mechanism. So when you're talking about emotional stress and trauma or any kind of stress, lack of sleep is a stress. These are all stresses. And yes, a huge part of that is the emotional, mental stress element, which influences every facet of the nervous system and therefore every facet of health.
Yeah, I was trying to, for one of my kids the other day, simplify cancer because we lost 3 grandparents, an auntie at an early age. Last year, we lost my children's piano player, teacher. He was around the house 2-3 times a week, died early 30s. So cancer is the one everybody's worried about. And I said, okay, let me try and simplify it. Cancer is only caused by stress, but stress can come from so many different things. It's like you've just said, it could be the stress of eating the wrong foods, therefore the body's fighting it. It could be the stress of not getting enough exercise. It might be prolonged stress, cortisol raised because of depression or whatever. You've got to look at what stresses the body, can come from so many different things, and just trying to de-stress in every way, shape and form you can, like optimal nutrition, like taking the load off the immune system from using creams and potions and lotions with chemicals in them, and just getting out in the sunshine, getting out in fresh air, just anything you can do to de-stress the body. So thank you for that, Poppy. Great question. Gemma. Hello, Gemma. I think it's the first question we've ever had from Gemma. That is a very powerful sugar cartoon. Oh, thank you. Sean says, I can't answer this one. Sean says, would gin and slimline tonic be a good tipple for lockdown in moderation? You
don't want me to be honest, that's the problem.
Yeah, I don't want to be honest. Let's all try not to drink too much.
Also, just to mention on slimline,
yes,
I would rather she had sugary tonic, to be fair. Mm-hmm. I don't love artificial stuff any more than I love sugar. Pour yourself a different gin type of measure, have less of the tonic, which is sort of anti-drink less, but just have a shorter drink, but use full sugar tonic.
What's your view on then the diet colas, the diet tonics, where they're replacing sugar with artificial sweeteners? What's your take on artificial sweeteners?
So I have a problem with them. I feel that for several reasons. One, some of them have been shown to have real negative effects on the gut biome. That's like a front line of everything for health. So that's not something you want to mess with. And so too, that goes for things like carrageenan, which creeps into all sorts of things, particularly the milks that you can buy that are non-dairy. So you've just got to be watching for those sorts of things. But also back to nervous system and how the body is sensing its internal, external environments. If you have something that tastes sweet, that has no sugar, no sweetness in it, you can often be more hungry. You can actually go, oh my God, I don't have anything here. So you then crave more. And also we tend to mentally think that we've had a free pass because we've had a diet drink. So mentally we think, oh, so we can have the chocolate bar because we've had a diet soda. It messes with psychology as well as physiology. So it's not they're not my favorite things.
Yeah, all the research, certainly for my last book I did, spoke to a lot of experts around gut and the microbiome, so many people are agreeing with what you're saying there, Victoria, that it really can. We think, we don't know for sure yet. There's not any clinical research yet, but there's so much evidence pointing towards it screwing up the microbiome. So yeah, avoid it. I'd like to say have orange juice with it, but then that's also then loaded with sugar. What else could you have? Water with it, Jack.
Gin on the rocks. Gin on the rocks is fine.
Gin on the rocks. Oh, we're not endorsing it. We're just saying we're answering your question. Yeah. I tell you what. Patrick Holford would say he'd have a berry extract, because the berry extract juice, I can't remember what they're called now, but the sugar's different in berries than it is in other fruits. Yeah. Or just don't have it. There you go. Can't believe I've just said that. What have we got next? So is cheesecake? No, cheesecake's not okay to have. Just because I said cheese is okay. Okay, good one. What about beans in the morning with eggs? Depends what they mean by beans. If you mean cans of beans, well, turn it round, read the label. It's full of sugar, I think. Last time I looked. Yeah. Beans.
Even the reduced sugar ones are still not baked beans.
Hang on. Where have you got cheesecake from?
Where have I got cheesecake from? Where? Have I just made that up, Jack?
I'm picking up questions.
I've just made that up. I'm so dyslexic. I add words. It doesn't even say cheesecake. Sean says so. So is cheese okay to have then? I was under the impression cheese is bad. Okay, my little bit on. Let's see what Victoria's got to say, and I'll tell you my take on cheese in a minute, Sean.
So if you're primal, dairy is very allowed, but the quality of the dairy is very important. We're not talking about homogenized, pasteurized milks and all that sort of rubbish. We are talking about, and particularly with cheese, so the thing that irritates, that often causes reactions, and that what we're talking about for food eliminations are proteins, and with dairy, the sugars. But most often when we're talking paleo primal, we're talking proteins. So when you're having cheese, it is quite a lot of fat with less of the proteins, as opposed to yogurt, which would be quite a lot of the sugar and the proteins and less fat. So if you're looking at that and you're looking at dairy, we say that butter and ghee are very high in fat and very little protein, so tend to be very healthy, very good. Cheese too can come in that category. If it's obviously not make your life around cheese, like not cheese every meal, but cheese can certainly be a useful source of nutrient-dense calories and actually some important fatty acids. GLA is quite high in dairy products, so it actually can be very supportive if had in moderation.
Great. Well, I don't need to add to that because that's brilliant. I totally agree. Especially try and find, if you can, cheeses that are fermented. I mean, if they're really fermented, then we can be supporting the microbiome in a very positive way. There we go. Grima, I know Grima, she's in India. Is mayonnaise added in pasta and grilled sandwich nutritious for humans, or is it just developed taste only? I don't know what, can somebody just Google mayonnaise? Maybe that's mayonnaise. Is mayonnaise added to pasta and grilled sandwich? The thing is, pasta. Say again, Jack?
It is indeed mayonnaise.
It is mayonnaise. So mayonnaise is an interesting one, isn't it? Because in theory, mayonnaise is healthy, but you've just got to be careful in the supermarkets what oils they've used, because if they've used vegetable oils, but if you made your own mayonnaise at home with healthy oils and eggs, great. You ever tried to do it yourself?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a NutriBullet here, and I tried to make mayonnaise, but the NutriBullet made it really hot, so it just cooks my eggs. So that's a waste of time and oil. But yes, mayonnaise. I have a love-hate relationship with mayonnaise because it's one of those things that I can eat way too much of. And you just hit on one of the things that we really should mention. Oil quality in your diet is possibly more important than sugar. And that's a bold statement, but the quality of the oils you eat, everything in your body runs on the fatty acids that you have. So your cell membrane's made up of them, your brain runs on it, your myelin sheath around your nerves. Really, fats are really important, and use the fats that you consume to make those fats. And all of the fatty acids within you are derived from the diet. So having healthy oils, by which I mean olive oil, avocado oil, coconut oil to a degree, although it's very saturated, so in moderation, but all of these healthy oils, very, very good for you. but not anything refined, overheated, processed, vegetable, rubbish oils, which actually eliminates 99% of processed foods. So it's useful to think of like that.
Yeah, the problem is I have a real problem with vegetable oils because it's called vegetables. And of course, before I got into this, 25 years of being obese and exercising, but still obese, no matter what I tried, every diet I went on. Well, I turned to that in the supermarket. Go, it's vegetable oils made from vegetables. That must be the best oil to go for. But it's not made from vegetables, is it? It's just made from GMO crops. It just drives me mad. That's why I'm furious. Don't consume vegetables. And there's a doctor in the UK called Dr. Malcolm Kendrick, and he explained this to me, and see if I've got this right. He said that when we eat food, obviously it breaks down to fat, breaks down to protein and carbohydrates. When it comes out through the villi, through our intestines, and travels around the body, the carbohydrates and the protein go through the kidneys, through the liver first, so it gets like a filtration. The problem with all these dangerous oils is because the way it travels through the body, it doesn't necessarily end up at the liver. Therefore, if it's toxic on the way in, it can get straight into the bloodstream.
And it's not food that our body really recognizes. And it's very easy to just remember that all these vegetable oils are actually omega-6 based, so they're pro-inflammatory. We need a bit of omega-6, but we need way more omega-3. And we don't get enough in our diets. That's your salmon, your oily fish. And having too many of these omega-6 fats for that mechanism, but also just for other things in the inflammatory pathways, omega-6s are just not great things to have around.
Yeah, they say that the ratio should be around 1-to-1, omega-3 to omega-6, but a lot of studies, certainly on the SAD diet, I love that word, the SAD diet, which stands for Standard American Diet, can be out. Some people have got ratios of 20-to-1, which apparently is very, very dangerous for inflammation. The SAD diet. I wonder what acronym we can come for the British diet. So Grimmer, thank you for the question. Mayonnaise, yes, good. Drop the pasta because pasta is carbs, especially if you're trying to lose weight. But make sure the oil in your mayonnaise is a healthy oil. Oh, what happened there? Oh, it's only your light, Jack. Jack's turned himself off. Hi, I am Padam Jain from Bangkok. Hi, Padam. Doctor advised me to stop eating any kind of flour, milk and sugar and less intake of rice to control my HbA1c, which is 6.1 now. Since I am vegetarian, so please give me some ideas. Wow, great email. So he's got a HbA1c of 6.1, he's vegetarian. If he can't have flour, milk and sugar and less rice, what should he be eating?
Beans are your friend if you're all vegetarian, beans and other grains. So the whole thing about rice, the whole thing about carbs is that they digest very quickly and very quickly become sugar. So if you've then got low free glucose, that's the problem. So great advice from the doctor. Doctors always say don't do. They never say do this instead, which I find distinctly unhelpful. So instead, you're looking at different grains. So things like quinoa, and you can use brown rice. You can use all sorts of things, millets and buckwheat and all those sorts of grains if you want a grain-based something. You can also use all of the legumes, so pulses, beans, lentils. It's actually a great culture to have this kind of nutrition. Indian culture tends to be vegetarian. There's a lot of dairy in Indian culture often, but it's easy to replace that with things like coconut milk and lesser sort of dairy products. Potatoes are also quite big in Indian culture, and you can shift that onto sweet potatoes, yam type things, which just lowers the GI, lowers the sugar release of all of that, and can make the diet much more, much less influential on the blood sugar peaks and troughs.
Yeah. I mean, the key thing there, Padam, is, if you're in Bangkok, you've got access to so many amazing herbs. So the flavor's not a problem for you because you've got your lemongrass, you've got your ginger, you've got your garlic, you've got so many things that you can add. Massive green, we have black pepper, they have the green peppers on the stalk in Bangkok. So there's loads of ways you can get flavor into your dish. So what I would recommend then is get cauliflower. I'm just assuming you've got cauliflower in Thailand, I don't know. But if you've got cauliflower in Thailand, learn to make cauliflower rice, then chuck in all your fish sauce or your lime juice, all the things you would normally put into a Thai dish, into the rice. You can make the most gorgeous Thai rice, and you won't even realize you're not eating rice by using cauliflower rice. And then like Victoria's just said, make your curry still with your coconut milk like you do in Thailand anyway, and then chuck all the things that I know you have lots of, which lots of green vegetables in. You can do it. You can do it.
Yeah.
I tell you what, I wouldn't mind being.
I didn't say Bangkok either, so I missed that. But yeah, no, Thailand's easy to do this. Yeah. Loads of everything.
Everything. In fact, if I was going to be locked down, my choices would probably be Bangkok because the food is fantastic. Daniela says cheese gives me mucus. Well, that's not a question, it's a statement. Cheese gives me mucus.
Can do.
Don't know. Can do. Okay. Sean says, thank you for answering all my questions. Don't worry, Steve. I'll stay clear of the cheesecake, which you didn't write anyway. And I've just been told by my own team that I have to mention that in our book we have our own recipe for mayo. It is true, but don't worry, you haven't got to buy the book. I've put every single recipe on the Primal Living website during lockdown because we think this is a perfect opportunity for you to all try to cook something new for the first time. Victoria, it's been an absolute blast having you on.
Oh, it's been lovely to be here.
Yeah, really, really enjoyed it. We don't know how long lockdown's going to be, so if it goes on and on, can we get you back?
Of course, I love this, yeah.
Oh, it's great. Thank you very, very much. And can we just promote Victoria's website one more time, Jack, before we go?
Very sweet, thank you.
So talk us through your website and what people can expect when they get there, Victoria.
Effectively, it's actually in the process of being rebuilt, but I do everything. I do everything from complex testing all the way through to nutrition. I do systems biology, but I also do, I have a network of professionals globally. A lot of this is run out in the UK, but we do all sorts of functional medicine tests for complex chronic illness, anything from autoimmunity to cancer, and also all the way up to health optimization. So people trying to do their genetics and biohack, all of that.
That's brilliant. Thank you very, very much for being on the show today, and enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
I will do, and to you.
Thank you. Everybody, that was the brilliant Victoria Fenton. Do go and check out her website. I promise you at some stage we'll do a podcast in our Fat and Furious podcast series, because every time I speak to Victoria, I learn loads and loads, and I hope you do too. Also remember, I was going to say the way we're funding this program, we're not funding it at all, it's totally opposite. In fact, the more you donate, the more I promise that I'll donate. So we're matching pound per pound as a family, every donation up to £100,000 to the Trussell Trust, which operate 1,250 food banks across the UK. And now, in this very difficult time we find ourselves all in, they need our help more than ever. So if you could, right now, this Sunday, just think about those families that haven't got food on their table, and maybe we've helped you rethink about the food that you've got. Maybe you've got that bag of pasta in your cupboard, and you've gone, oh, I don't think I fancy pasta anymore after what I've just learned. Go and take it down to the food banks. You don't have to go into the supermarket and buy the food from that supermarket. You can put in the food that you've already got at home. In fact, in particular, UHT milk, there isn't a lot in many of the supermarkets, but they are crying out for UHT. So have a look through your cupboard. Maybe tomorrow, Monday, you're going to say, right, I'm going to give this Primal thing a go. I'm going to really be really healthy. In fact, if my 5 kids weren't at home right now, this is exactly what I'd be doing, because I'm fasting for the next 5 days. I'll let you know how we'll get on. And I mean total fast for 5 days, which is going to be really difficult, avoiding all the temptations around the home, particularly the nuts, which I love, and the occasional glass of wine. But I'm going to not do it for 5 days. So if I was at home right now, I'd be going through the cupboard. I'd be going, well, I'm not going to need you next week. Put it in the food bank. I'm not going to need you next week. Put it in the food bank. So let's see what donations we can make. Let's, food-wise, let's also, if we can, just text a small donation to the text number, or visit Just Giving. Till tomorrow. And by the way, tomorrow is an amazing show. We've got lines. It is Jenny Phillips tomorrow, isn't it?
Indeed.
We've got Jenny Phillips with us tomorrow. Tuesday, we've got the previous deputy leader the Labour Party, Tom Watson, who wrote a great book called Downsizing, joining us on Tuesday. We've got a week full of
Hang on.
Whoa,
I've just realised.
what?
We're in the food fact.
Hey?
We're into the food fact.
Oh, Jack! We haven't done today's food fact.
Thank you to Tracy who brought that up.
Thank you to Tracy for mentioning we haven't done today's food fact. Well, here's one of the things that kind of I've been talking about all show. I love macadamia nuts. They are full of health. They are amazing for us. But while they've got loads of vitamins, loads of minerals, loads of nutrition, loads of things that are really, really super healthy for us, just like all nuts, don't go having handfuls and handfuls and handfuls unless you're slender, unless you want to put some weight on, because nuts do come with a lot of energy as well. But if you're going to snack on something, then nuts are your friends. I'll leave you with that thought. Join us again tomorrow at the same time. Join me at 10 o'clock every morning live on YouTube. Simply go to Primal Living's channel and you'll see our new food bank show. Now, the food bank show is basically what it says on the tin. We're trying to raise money for food banks across the UK that more than ever need our support. At the same time, in every show, I'll be joined by doctors and nutritionists that are going to help us reshape the food that we eat. Because maybe there's a bit of a silver lining for our health right now. All of the restaurants are shut. The McDonald's, the Subway, the Greggs, they're all closed. So we've got to change our eating habits anyway. But with the advice of some of the world's leading doctors, some of the world's leading nutritionists, I'm going to help you reshape the food that you're consuming and hopefully boost your immune system to get through this very difficult time.